Welcome to Let's Talk Learning Disabilities with Laurie Peterson and Abby Weinstein. Laurie and Abby spend their days talking about dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and ADHD. They talk to parents of struggling students and adults who have had a lifetime of academic challenges. They want to share those stories along with their own insights with you. So, let's talk learning disabilities.
Hey everybody, this is Laurie.
And this is Abby.
Welcome to Let's Talk Learning Disabilities.
We are bringing you another episode in our 12-part series called Turning Struggles into Triumphs, Parenting Through Learning Challenges.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's interview. Have a great day.
Hello, welcome Tricia. Thank you for being here today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so excited. It's been so fun to get to listen to parents talk about where they were and where they are now, because we oftentimes, we get, we really get invested in a child's performance and we evaluate them, and then we come up with this plan for success moving forward. And then we oftentimes don't get to hear how they're doing or what the parent thought about the whole process. So it's pretty cool. So thank you again for being here. So for our listeners, first off, tell us a little bit about some of the challenges and difficulties you observed, whether it be academic and or behavioral, prior to any diagnosis or evaluation.
Sure. With Sydney, my middle child, she was always everybody said she had big feelings. That was probably the first thing we noticed, was that her emotions were very large. And we always just figured she took after her mom, because my feelings are also very large, coincidentally for the same reason. So her reactions were always so big. When she was happy, she was ecstatic. When she was kind of inconvenienced, she was extremely irritated. And so just those extremes, I think, were the first flag that we didn't realize were a flag, And then when she started school, specifically kindergarten, we'd moved from Illinois to Hawaii. And so the age to start school was pushed back a month, which meant Sydney would have to redo another grade, preschool, because at the time she was not quite 5. And so rather than do that, we put her in a private kindergarten and then just assumed she'd be able to test into first grade. Well, that process was very tricky. And that was exactly what made me think, there might be something more than just Sydney not liking to read. She was really struggling with it. And so that was sort of what started this hunt and this research on, my part to figure out what it is that, is giving her such a problem. Right. And then, years down the road, we found you folks and got her tested. But there was an instance at the school where I spoke with a teacher when Sydney was in 3rd grade about getting her tested, and the school did not see any reason to intervene at that point.
Really?
So I actually had to pay out of pocket to get her tested somewhere, and they didn't find anything, which they said could happen because she was so young at the time. That happened in 3rd grade, and then 5th grade was when we found you folks.
Okay.
And got the answers we needed.
Well, good. I'm glad you did. So when you went to school and you had concerns, they said, we don't see a need to do any type of evaluation on her. She'll catch up and make progress and be just fine.
Yeah.
But was she still struggling? You saw her struggling at home with homework and schoolwork.
Reading and writing. Her journal entries, in 3rd grade, they make the children write every day in a journal, and that it was pulling teeth for her. She would cry. Homework, just writing in a journal, 1 paragraph, hours of just agony for her. It wasn't fun for anybody, really.
No, I'm sure not.
Yeah.
And so you sought, since the school did not see a need for evaluation, you sought out private testing. And so you had a private evaluation done. You said she was in 5th grade, correct?
The first time she was in 3rd grade.
Okay, so the first time it was a private evaluator that tested her in third grade, and they didn't find any type of learning disability or ADHD or anything.
She was she was within a normal range, I guess, and I would have to look at the paperwork to, confirm, but it was she wasn't quite where she needed to be in order to signify ADHD.
Okay.
And
So she
and
was
they said
showing
that
some
could happen
signs, but
because of
not.
her age. Right. Because she was so young, they had to modify the test. And because it was modified into that like short little amount, she was able to do it. I mean, because we gave her tools. I saw a lot of me in her. So I kind of passed on the, behavioral therapy that I had learned just by accident growing up. So she was using the tools that I was using, but she needed more.
Right. Okay. So she had developed some coping skills. So then she was evaluated and diagnosed ADHD, dyslexia, and
it's a visual processing
disorder.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the evaluation process like for you?
Very easy. I mean,
Good.
I reached out and I've got a response almost, I want to say, in the same day with a game plan and a schedule. And at the time, I think it might have been during COVID when we were doing a lot of e-learning. So the idea of my daughter getting evaluated via computer didn't seem so ridiculous anymore because everything was being done virtually. So getting her to sit in front of the computer, I mean, for her, besides the fact that she was in 5th grade, so she was older now, she was used to that. So that part was easy. And she enjoyed the testing process. She thought it was a game. Yeah, so she had a good time. And, it was fairly painless. We filled out, there was a written portion that she had to, write in and fill out. I sent that in, I think, the next day and got results in less than 2 weeks.
Wow. That's good. That's a quick turnaround.
Fast. Yeah. And gave the results immediately to the school. Immediately the school set a schedule to talk about a, IEP. And now she doesn't hate school anymore.
Oh, wow. That's so great. I'm so glad to hear that.
Confidence is back.
Oh, and good. Everything. That's huge. That's very important. Her confidence
made a big difference.
Yeah. So the school was very responsive. It sounds like they accepted the evaluation, the outside private evaluation, had a IEP team meeting, developed an IEP for her, and then put the supports in place that she needed to make good progress.
And she absolutely needs them because she has dysgraphia. So writing in the journal was torture for her because she just couldn't get from head to pen. It just, the writing part, everything about that she hated. And so now she's able to do talk to text on her computer, which is making her quality of work so much better because she can focus more on what she is saying rather than the actual process of writing it.
Exactly.
So you're seeing a increase in her output, which
that's what I was going to say. Better and more quality output.
Exactly.
Take away the physical aspect of writing, and she's getting good output. And then did they put her in a dyslexia therapy intervention program?
No, she doesn't have dyslexia. She just has dysgraphia.
Okay. I'm sorry. You're right.
So they haven't needed to do that, which is good. We still need to find a specialist to maybe help and get her some glasses. She tends to get headaches pretty easily. But now we know what those are from.
Yes.
So that answers a lot of questions too. Yeah. Less visits, to the optical department for glasses,
For sure. Yes. Make sure that vision is intact. So how did you feel? I know you had already a gut feeling that something was going on, that something just wasn't right. She wasn't making the progress she should be making with her intelligence and the instruction she was receiving. So how did you feel when you received the diagnoses?
100% validated. I knew ever since she was in kindergarten, I didn't know what it was. Honestly, I thought it was dyslexia. I didn't even think it was ADHD because she's not hyperactive.
Right.
She has she has mixed. I guess according to the testing, it's mixed, but mostly
Inattentive.
It's inattentive, and she tends to, have impulse control issues. She wants to shout out the answers or like say something immediately. So it's more, that's how her ADHD presents, which can be disruptive in class. But now that the teachers are aware of it, they let her chew gum in class, which surprisingly helps her focus. Yeah. And a lot of times that's not allowed. And for her, it is so crucial. Yeah. Just that chewing helps her concentrate.
That oral motor.
Yep.
That's a really good recommendation. It's very rare that you think to add that as an accommodation, because like elementary schools, they don't allow the kids to chew gum, even middle schools, because it ends up on the carpet or under the desk. Exactly. But with a lot of students, it does help them focus. It kind of slows their brain. It's that oral motor, like sensory input, kind of helps their brain.
She's had that ever since she was born. The oral just input. I mean, that and the emotions, those two things were very much part of who we thought Sydney was. Enough, they were symptoms,
Right.
So
yeah, that's great. So how is she doing now? Besides, you had mentioned that her confidence is much stronger. Is she doing well academically? And has she learned some other different types of coping skills and strategies and tools for managing the ADHD symptoms?
She is a little bit more forgiving of herself. And when she gets frustrated and those big emotions I was talking about, she's a little bit more aware of it now. Just having for some reason, that label just helps. It helps her wrap her head around what's going on in her brain.
Right.
She feels more in control. Once she's able to call it out, she can kind of then look at herself and go, okay, I'm a little bit dysregulated right now. I need to take a minute, deep breath in, deep breath out, move her eyes around, because the headaches, if she's been concentrating and focusing for so long, she needs to kind of pull away. So she's very self-aware. And I think that is helping her with the learning process. So her grades are actually slowly getting better. As she gets older, too, I think the teachers get a little bit more forgiving in how she can answer, because they're a little bit more qualitative with the work rather than just like, numbers. And she's really starting to shine, which is great. And she's in drama, so which is a great outlet for her creatively. Definitely. She can just, kind of explode on stage and get all of that out.
Right.
And then, rein it in when she needs to for school. So that combination for her is magic.
Oh, wonderful. That does sound like that would be a really great outlet for her creativity, but also to get a lot of her energy out, her talking, get that attention in a positive way rather than engaging in attention-seeking behavior in negative ways. So that's wonderful. Exactly. Oh, good. I'm so glad she's doing so well. And
we are too.
I think, going into sometimes, parents are really scared. They use that word, quote unquote, label. I don't want to label my child or stigmatize them or put them in special education and have that label on them. But I think without that label or that term that defines and explains why you have the difficulties you have, you end up feeling like, I'm stupid, I'm lazy, what's wrong with me? And that causes a lot of that negative self-talk and the anxiety and the depression. And so I think you intervene at a very good point in time and made sure that she had the supports in place that she needed to be able to start feeling good and successful and being able to understand, like, I'm very smart and my brain just learns differently. Right? It's kind of like, I need a certain type of fuel.
That was exactly. So my husband has ADHD as well. And I was diagnosed as an adult. I do not have the hyperactivity piece. And so, and that's why I saw a lot of myself in Sydney. But my husband was diagnosed as a child, and his parents didn't want him to be labeled. And so that there was a bit of a resistance when him and I discussed getting her tested. And I told him, or one of the things that kind of helped kind of change how he looked at it as a label versus more like a street sign. So I kind of put it to him like, instead of a label, it's more of like a street sign. It's sort of like, this is what this is. And so now you know what to expect. And when you manage those expectations, it becomes less of a burden and more of like instructions, or, you know, you're on the right path because you know that those, you know what to expect. And so for me, I felt like that sign, not a label, was so important for Sydney. And, I don't mean to be smug, but I was right. I mean, it worked out that way. And so I think if people hopefully look at it more in that way, we can get away from the whole label and stigma thing and kind of move towards okay, now I know. This makes so much more sense now because I can see from this sign what's happening over here.
Yes. Exactly. That's a
You're
great
managing other people's
analogy.
expectations too.
Yes, you're right. It does. It helps you understand your child better and kind of not necessarily lower your expectations, but change them in a way that your child's capable of meeting those expectations and giving her the tools and skills to be able to meet those expectations. And also feeling, sometimes those expectations, it does change the way you perceive certain behaviors, knowing, okay, it's ADHD. She doesn't have control over it. She didn't choose to ignore the 3-step direction I gave her and just do step 1. Or she didn't choose to do her homework but forget to turn it in or put it in her backpack for school the next day. So
her relationship with other adults has gotten better too because of those big emotions. It comes off as bratty. Yeah. If she can't get something she has her heart set on and she bursts into tears. It's not a fit. It's just she's bursting into tears and people, oh God, what a brat. She just feels it so deeply.
Right.
So now the adults, realize that and they're like, oh, okay, she's not a brat. She's just feeling and she'll be done in a minute.
Yep.
And then she's done and they can move on. So that's been a huge help too.
Wonderful. That's so great. I'm so glad to hear she's doing well. I'm so happy the evaluation process was easy for you guys and it was fun for Sydney and that diagnosis actually confirmed what you suspected in your gut in addition to some other difficulties and then in turn gave you kind of that plan or that roadmap for success moving forward.
Exactly.
Awesome. Wonderful. So if you had, one piece of advice for a parent that is, watching their child struggle at home or, at school, what would be the advice you would give to other parents that kind of walked in your shoes?
I've heard this piece of advice given and it sounds cliche, but it is so very true. I don't think that it can ever be said enough is to trust your gut always. And it's so cliche. You hear it all the time, but there's a reason why. There's a reason why, because it bears repeating as many times as you need to hear it to trust your gut. It took years. From the time Sydney was in kindergarten, that's 5 years old, till she was almost 10.
Right.
5 years. I was like, what is going on? And you just can't stop until you find what you're looking for. Right. So don't stop.
I think that's great advice. Yep. Follow that mommy gut feeling or daddy gut feeling and advocate for your child, right? Keep pushing.
That's huge.
Keep pushing and, diving into figuring out what exactly is going on when you know that there must be something. So I think that's great advice. Thank you so much, Tricia. I appreciate you sharing your story and being so open and honest and vulnerable with us. And I feel like there's going to be some other listeners that your story will really resonate with. So I appreciate that.
Of course. It was my pleasure. I'm happy to do it. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right.
Thank you so much for joining us today. In our show notes, you can find information about today's talk, as well as links to resources and other episodes. If you have questions about today's talk, have ideas for future episodes, or just want to stay connected, you can contact us through Diagnostic Learning Services on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So, let's keep talking learning disabilities. This podcast is sponsored by eDiagnostic Learning. You can find more information at www.ediagnosticlearning.com.